The radio crackled and Bryce's voice cut through the wind. "You're fired. Pack your trash." I was 200 feet up in a crane holding a 20-ton container over the only exit road. I keyed the mic. "Okay, but I have one last move. My name is Garrett Crawford. I'm 49 years old and I've been running cranes for 24 years. Before that, I spent 6 years with the Navy Seabees, building bases and moving heavy equipment where mistakes got people killed. They teach you precision there. They teach you that shortcuts kill. That morning started normal. I was up in my Leaper crane cab, 200 feet above Baltimore Port. Wind steady at 12 knots, well within limits. The dock crew below looked like ants loading the cargo ship that had to sail by midnight. Everything ran smooth until Bryce Callahan showed up. Bryce was 30, fresh from business school, and had been site supervisor for exactly 3 weeks. His uncle Andrew owned half the Port Authority, which explained how someone with zero crane experience ended up giving orders to crane operators. He drove a Porsche that cost more than my yearly salary and wore a hard hat that looked brand new. "Crawford, you copy?" His voice buzzed through my headset. "Copy, Bryce." I kept my eyes on the container I was positioning over truck chassis, B-47. Container 404 Bravo, 20 tons of what the manifest called recycled copper. "You're moving too slow up there. Disable the load dampener and swing that box faster." "We're behind schedule." I tightened my grip on the controls. The load dampener stopped the container from swaying in wind gusts. Without it, that 20-ton box could crush someone below. Disabling it violated OSHA regulations and company policy. Negative. "Winds gusting to 15 knots. Dampener stays on." "I didn't ask for your opinion, Crawford. I gave you a direct order." I looked down at the tiny orange vest by the loading dock. From up here, he looked like what he was, a kid playing with equipment he didn't understand. "Order denied. I operate by the book. You want it done different? Come up here and do it yourself." Radio silence for about 10 seconds. I'd pushed his buttons. Guys like Bryce hate hearing no, especially from someone with grease under their fingernails, but I knew my rights. The crane operator has final say on safety decisions. That's how it works. The container settled onto the chassis with a soft thud. I was swinging the boom back toward the stack when Bryce's voice came through again. This time the whining was gone, replaced by something cold. "Crawford, bring the boom to rest position. I've got 2 more containers on the manifest. The ship sails at midnight. Not by you, they don't. You're fired. Insubordination. Refusal to follow direct orders. I'm also writing you up for negligence, operating while impaired." That hit me hard. Operating while impaired meant drinking on the job. That would strip my crane license permanently. I'd never work in this industry again. I'd lose my pension, my reputation, everything I'd built over 2 decades. You can't fire me over the radio, Bryce. And you sure can't fire me for following safety protocols. Already called the union hall. Told them you were slurring your words, acting erratic. Security's on the way to escort you off the property. Pack your trash and climb down. I could hear the smirk in his voice. I stared down at the yard and saw the security car with flashing lights parked at my crane's base. Bryce stood next to it, arms crossed, looking up at me like he'd won the lottery. This wasn't just about a job. This was about destroying my life because I wouldn't break the rules. My wife Susan needed her diabetes medication, expensive stuff that insurance barely covered. My daughter Melissa was a college freshman, and we were already stretching to pay tuition. Losing this job meant losing everything. But I looked at my control panel. All green lights, engine humming smooth. I remembered something my chief petty officer used to say, sometimes the best defense is a good offense. "You want me to stop working?" My voice stayed calm. "I want you off my site." Bryce snapped. "All right, Bryce, I'll stop working. But first, I've got one last move to make." I grabbed the joystick and swung the boom hard left, away from the ship toward the container yard. People below stopped and looked up. They knew the work wasn't done. They knew that Swing wasn't heading toward any scheduled pickup. "Crawford, what are you doing?" Panic crept into Bryce's voice. I said, "Power down." I ignored him. I had my eye on a specific target, a red container sitting on stack 4. Container 404 to Bravo had been there for 3 days, and I'd noticed Bryce checking on it constantly, yelling at anyone who got close. I lowered the spreader and felt the twist locks engage with a solid clank. "Crawford, put that down." Bryce was screaming now. "That container isn't on the manifest. You fired me, remember? I don't work for you anymore, just cleaning up." I lifted the 20-ton box into the air and swung toward the main gate, the single road in and out of this port section. Narrow, maybe 30 feet wide, with concrete barriers on both sides and deep harbor water beyond. Block that road and nothing moved. "Crawford, don't you dare." Bryce shrieked. "I'll have you arrested. You already took my job and reputation. What else you got?" I positioned the container directly over the road. Wind steady at 12 knots. No people or vehicles below, just asphalt that was about to get a heavy visitor. "This is for the safety violation," I whispered and hit the release. The container hung for a split second, then gravity took over. The red box plummeted straight down and hit with a sound like a bomb going off. The impact shook my crane tower and sent dust flying 50 feet in every direction. The container didn't just land, the force was so violent that the rusted seams split open like a cracked egg. The doors buckled and I could see what was really inside. It wasn't recycled copper, it was pristine copper wire still on spools, and behind that, server blades and anti-static bags. High-end electronics worth hundreds of thousands. Oops, I said into the radio, slipped. I reached for the crane's ignition key, pulled it out and looked at it. Then I opened the cab window and tossed that key as far as I could into the dark harbor water 200 feet below. Come and get me. Throwing a key into the ocean might seem small, but when that key is the only way to operate a 200-ton crane blocking the exit road, it becomes a big problem fast. These aren't cars you can hotwire. The ignition system is computerized and tied to that specific key fob. I settled back and watched the chaos below. The container had split wide open, spilling contents across the road. Trucks were already backing up behind the blockage, drivers climbing out to see what happened, and Bryce was running around trying to throw tarps over the spilled goods. That's when I knew I'd hit something bigger than a workplace dispute. You don't panic like that over recycled scrap metal. My phone buzzed. Text from Cole Sullivan, an old Navy buddy who'd gone into digital forensics after getting out. "Saw the port scanner feed, that you causing trouble up there." I called him back. "Cole, I need a favor. Big one, talk to me. Just got fired for following safety regs. Boss tried to frame me for drinking. I dropped a container to block the exit and it split open. Supposed to be scrap copper, but I'm seeing high-end stuff through my binoculars." Smuggling, Cole said without hesitation. "If he's shipping valuable electronics as scrap, he's avoiding customs and taxes. That's federal, Garrett. How long you been watching this guy? 3 weeks since he started. He's been obsessed with certain containers, always checking manifests. Sit tight, don't talk to cops without a lawyer. I'm pulling the port's digital records now. If he's been doctoring manifests, there'll be a trail. And Garrett, those new cranes have internal recording systems. Audio and video from the cab uploads to the cloud every hour. I mean, I've got every word he said to you today. Give me 20 minutes. I hung up and watched the show below. Port Authority police had arrived and I could see Bryce arguing with them, pointing up at my crane. Officer Reeves was down there, good man who'd worked the docks long enough to know the difference between real problems and corporate drama. My phone rang. Cole again. "Got it. Your boy's been shipping stolen company property for months. That container you dropped? It's part of a $2 million inventory theft that his uncle's company reported last week. Insurance paid out, and now they're selling the same stuff overseas. Insurance fraud, theft, customs violations. This kid's looking at serious federal time. I'm sending everything to the FBI and Port Authority. Oh, and Garrett, that recording from your crane cabin, he's on tape ordering you to violate safety regs and then lying about the DUI. When federal agents arrived 45 minutes later, they didn't come for me, they came for Bryce. I watched from my perch as they put him in handcuffs while he screamed about his lawyer and his uncle. The container's contents were photographed, cataloged, and traced back to the company's missing inventory. A crane technician took 6 hours to get a replacement key and lower me down. By then, Bryce was gone. The stolen goods were evidence, and I was sitting in the Port Authority office giving my statement to some very interested federal investigators. The union rep showed up with a lawyer. The company, eager to distance itself from the nephew's crimes, offered me my job back with a promotion to training supervisor. The FBI agent in charge shook my hand and said they'd been investigating port corruption for months, and my accident had given them the break they needed. I walked out of that office with my job, my reputation, and a commendation letter from the Port Authority. The security guard who'd been ready to escort me out earlier tipped his hat as I passed. Cole was waiting by my truck. How'd it go in there? Better than expected. They're calling me a whistleblower instead of a saboteur. That's because you're one. You just used a 20-ton container instead of paperwork. We stood there watching the FBI crime scene techs catalog evidence from the busted container. Copper wire, server components, and high-end networking equipment lay spread across the road like a tech store explosion. You know what the best part is? Cole said. What's that? That little punk thought he was untouchable because of his uncle's connections. Turns out, federal crimes don't care about local politics. I looked back at my crane, still towering over the port like a steel monument to workplace justice. Tomorrow I'd be back up there training the next generation of operators, teaching them about load limits and wind speeds, but mostly teaching them that sometimes standing up for what's right means taking a risk. Think this'll make the news? I asked. Port corruption bust with stolen military contractors' equipment? Yeah, this'll make the news. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of depositions, interviews, and paperwork. The FBI had opened a full investigation into the port's operations, and it turned out Bryce's little side business was just the tip of the iceberg. His uncle Andrew had been skimming inventory for years, reporting it stolen, collecting insurance payouts, then selling the same goods through shell companies overseas. Cole kept me updated on the investigation's progress. They found digital records going back 18 months. He told me over beers one Friday night, "Your boy Bryce wasn't even the mastermind. He was just the nephew doing grunt work for Uncle Andrew's operation." How much are we talking about? Conservative estimate? $8 million in stolen goods. Insurance fraud, customs violations, tax evasion. The whole family's going down. I thought about that number. $8 million stolen from legitimate businesses, honest workers who built those products, taxpayers who funded the infrastructure these thieves used. Also, a couple of rich guys could get richer. The trial started 6 months later. I testified about the safety violations, the false DUI accusation, and what I saw when the container split open. The prosecutor played the audio recording from my crane's telemetry system, Bryce's voice clear as day, ordering me to bypass safety protocols and then lying about my sobriety. Watching him squirm in that defendant's chair felt better than any raise I'd ever gotten. His expensive lawyer tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, but the evidence was overwhelming. 27 containers of stolen goods, falsified manifests, and digital trails leading straight back to the Callahan family operation. The jury took 4 hours to convict. Bryce got 8 years in federal prison. His uncle Andrew got 12 years and had to forfeit his stake in the Port Authority. The insurance companies recovered most of their losses and sent me a reward check for $25,000 as thanks for exposing the fraud. Susan cried when I showed her that check, not because of the money, though it would help with Melissa's tuition and her medical bills. She cried because for the first time in months she wasn't worried about losing our health insurance. "I'm proud of you," she said that night. "You could have just kept your head down and let them get away with it." Wasn't really a choice, I told her. Sometimes you have to stand up, even if it costs you. My promotion to training supervisor came with a small office overlooking the port and responsibility for all new crane operators. The first thing I did was install a copy of the OSHA safety regulations on every desk. The second thing was to make sure every trainee understood that safety protocols exist because people die without them. Danny Torres, my new apprentice, reminded me of myself at that age, eager to learn but impatient with procedures. During his first week, I caught him trying to rush a lift without proper wind speed checks. "Torres, what's the wind reading?" He glanced at the gauge. "About 14 knots, sir." "About isn't good enough." "What's the exact reading?" 14.2 knots, sir." "And what's our operating limit?" 15 knots for this load class, right? So we're within parameters, but barely. What happens if a gust hits while you're swinging that container? He thought about it. The load could sway and strike something. Or someone, remember that. The machine doesn't care if you're in a hurry. Physics doesn't care about schedules. Your job is to move cargo safely, not quickly. Danny nodded, but I could see he didn't really understand yet. They never do until they've been up there long enough to feel the responsibility that comes with controlling 200 tons of steel and concrete 200 feet in the air. The port's new management implemented additional safety training and mandatory reporting for any pressure to bypass regulations. They also installed backup recording systems on all cranes, not just the new ones. Some of the older operators grumbled about Big Brother watching, but I thought it was smart. Documentation protects everyone. Cole stopped by one afternoon while I was reviewing training schedules. "Saw the news about your old boss," he said. "Andrew Callahan's asking for early parole. After 2 years, that's optimistic. His lawyers are claiming health problems. Funny how prison makes rich guys suddenly discover medical issues." I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the port. New cranes were being installed. Newer ships were docking, and legitimate cargo was moving through clean channels. The corruption investigation had actually improved operations. Without the constant delays caused by hidden theft and falsified paperwork, we were moving 15% more cargo with the same workforce. "You ever regret it?" Cole asked. "Dropping that container? Regret exposing criminals? No, I mean regret the method. You could have just reported your suspicions to the FBI. I thought about that. Maybe. But suspicious reports from disgruntled employees don't usually get much attention. A 20-ton container full of stolen goods blocking a federal shipping lane. That gets immediate attention, true. Sometimes you need to make noise to be heard. That evening I drove home through streets I'd been driving for 20 years. Same route, same landmarks, but everything felt different somehow. More solid, maybe more secure. Susan had dinner waiting, and Melissa was home from college for the weekend, full of stories about her engineering classes. "Dad, you know what's funny?" Melissa said over dessert, "My professor was talking about workplace ethics this week, and he used your case as an example of proper whistleblowing." What'd he say? He said that sometimes doing the right thing requires taking personal risks, but that documentation and evidence are more powerful than accusations. I smiled. Your professor sounds smart. He also said that crane operators have one of the most responsible jobs in industrial work because their decisions affect so many people. That's true. Every lift matters. Later that night, Susan and I sat on our back porch looking out over the bay. Ships moved slowly across the horizon, their lights twinkling like moving stars. Somewhere out there, cargo was being loaded and unloaded by crane operators who understood that precision and safety weren't suggestions, they were requirements. 3 years have passed since that day on the crane. The port runs smoother now, with proper oversight and real consequences for cutting corners. I still climb up to the cab sometimes just to keep my skills sharp and remember what the job feels like from 200 feet up. The industry has changed too. Word traveled fast about what happened in Baltimore. Other ports started taking safety violations more seriously. Union reps began documenting every pressure to bypass protocols. Management learned that pushing workers too hard can backfire in expensive ways. Jimmy Valdez, our union representative, uses my case in training sessions for new shop stewards. Documentation saves careers, he tells them. But sometimes you need to make your own evidence. Danny Torres graduated to senior operator last month. He's steady, methodical, and follows every safety check without rushing. During his final evaluation, I asked him what he'd learned most from his training. That the crane doesn't care about deadlines, he said. And neither should I. Smart kid, he'll do fine. The Callahan corruption case became a textbook example in law enforcement circles. Cole told me that FBI training programs now included as a case study in following digital evidence trails. The recording system that caught Bryce's safety violations is now standard equipment on heavy equipment across multiple industries. My daughter Melissa finished her engineering degree and got hired by a construction company in Virginia. She calls every Sunday, usually with technical questions about load calculations or structural engineering. Susan jokes that our dinner conversations sound like engineering conferences, but I can hear the pride in her voice. "Dad, we're designing a new crane for port operations. Melissa told me last week. The safety systems are incredible compared to what you work with." "Safety systems are only as good as the operators using them," I reminded her. "Technology helps, but judgment matters more." "I know. That's why I always think about what you taught me, that every decision affects real people." Susan's health has stabilized with better insurance coverage and consistent medication. The stress of potential job loss had been affecting her more than she'd admitted. Now she volunteers at the community center, teaching financial literacy to dock workers' families. She understands better than most how quickly economic security can disappear. The reward money went into Melissa's college fund and a small emergency account. We didn't buy anything fancy or take expensive vacations. Money saved for real emergencies provides more peace of mind than money spent on luxuries. Port management invited me to speak at their annual safety conference last year. Standing at that podium, looking out at 300 crane operators, forklift drivers, and supervisors, I realized how much had changed since the Callahan investigation. Safety regulations exist because people died, I told them. Every rule was written in somebody's blood. When management pressures you to skip steps, remember that those steps exist to prevent tragedies. The applause was genuine, not polite. These were people who understood the weight of responsibility that comes with operating heavy machinery around other human beings. Bryce gets out of federal prison next year. His uncle Andrew won't see freedom for another 7 years. The Port Authority restructured completely with independent oversight and rotating management positions to prevent family dynasties from taking root again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just followed Bryce's orders that day. Disabled the safety dampener, rushed the lift, kept my head down. Probably nothing dramatic, just another small compromise in a long series of small compromises. But small compromises add up to big problems. The insurance companies that recovered their stolen property have hired Cole's forensics firm for ongoing security work. He specializes now in industrial theft and white-collar crime. Amazing how much evidence people leave behind when they think they're too smart to get caught, he says. My morning routine hasn't changed much. Coffee at 5:30, review of weather conditions and work schedules, safety briefing with the crew at 6:45. But now I also review incident reports from other ports, looking for patterns that might indicate problems brewing elsewhere. The crane cab still feels like a sanctuary at 200 feet up. The wind, the harbor spread out below, the precise dance of moving cargo from ship to shore. It's honest work that serves a real purpose. Every container moved efficiently helps keep commerce flowing and prices reasonable for regular people. New trainees sometimes ask about the Callahan case. I tell them the facts without drama. Corruption was exposed, criminals went to prison, systems improved. The lesson isn't about heroics or revenge. It's about understanding that individual choices matter, especially when those choices affect other people's safety and livelihoods. The port dedicates a small plaque near Crane Station 4 to workplace integrity and safety advocacy. My name isn't on it, which is fine. The message matters more than the messenger. You know, people ask me sometimes whether I'd do it again, drop that container, throw away that key, risk everything for a principle. The answer's always the same. When someone threatens your family's security and tries to force you to endanger others, you don't really have a choice. You stand up, or you live with the consequences of backing down. Here's what I learned from 27 years of moving heavy things in dangerous places. Your reputation is built one decision at a time. Your skills matter, your experience counts, but your character determines whether people trust you with responsibility. And in jobs where mistakes can kill people, trust isn't optional. Don't let anyone convince you that cutting corners is acceptable because everyone does it. Everyone doesn't do it. Good operators follow procedures because procedures work. Good companies support their workers because supported workers do better work. Good leaders take responsibility instead of passing blame down the chain. Document everything, know your rights, stand with your union brothers and sisters, and remember that the person operating heavy machinery next to you is counting on you to follow the rules, just like you're counting on them. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you in the short term, but doing the wrong thing costs everyone in the long term, and that's a price none of us should be willing to pay.
Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would, but pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection. Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone again. freezing, I'm bleeding, slowly fading away. But don't worry, I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile, every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here, maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. No, I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay.